Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Live to Be Well. And I'm Dr. Kim Logan-Nowlin. And as I always say, you're not living well unless you what? Live to be well. Let a friend know. Call somebody. Let them know that Live to Be Well is on. Hope you've had a blessed day and you're not going to allow anyone to keep you from living to be well. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how do we preserve and how important is Black history to us. You know, Black history is every day for me, 365 days. It's not just 1 month out of the year. And so I'm saying to all of us that we need to understand and recognize and celebrate Black history. We shall never forget Black history and what we have been through these last 400, 500 years, our ancestors. Joining me tonight, I'm so excited. I have two amazing African-American men historians, and I want to read a little bit before I bring them in. Kenny Anderson, MS, NCC, Executive Director, Leadership Empowerment Enterprise, and he's the host producer of the Second Chance radio show. I've known this great man for over 45 years. And you know, when your friendship has spanned that long, you must be doing something right by God, by mankind. And I'm telling you, I just love him. So come on, everybody, let's welcome Mr. Kenny Anderson. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, sis, I'm doing great. And you just said 45 years. That's amazing because it has been a rich journey of love and support and fellowship. You are my family, and I love you dearly. So anytime you invite me to be a part of your very important platforms, I'm appreciative of that. So thank you for this invitation.
And I appreciate you. You have opened Second Chance radio show to me so many times. And, you know, and also you have been a contributing writer in my books and continue to be a part of the history. I want to just say to you as an African-American man, how proud I am to know you. And I salute you. You know, I salute you. You know, what has it been like, you know, for our journey? Then I'm going to bring our next guest in because I want us to dialogue together. What has your journey been like? Coming from New York City, born and raised, what part of New York?
Lower East Side of Manhattan.
Lower East Side of Manhattan. And then coming to Huntsville, Alabama, where you and I met at Oakwood University. And then being, you know, who you are today. You know, just that rich history of we celebrate you. You know, I do these stories on my storyline for Facebook Live. And I'm going to be celebrating you. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, you're going to be my Black History moment for tomorrow. All right. Yes. Yes, you know, because I'm now bringing in the current, you know, those, you know, heroes and sheroes that we stand on the shoulders of giants. We stand on each other's shoulders. So what has this journey been like for you as a Black man?
It's been an incredible journey. And I think that everything that I think about in terms of reflecting on my journey really begins with those humble beginnings on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, being raised in public housing by two very loving parents who worked hard every day. They were working class people. We were in a situation where we didn't have a lot of things, but we had a lot of love. So my parents basically focused on providing for us a very strong spiritual foundation, a very strong academic foundation, and a foundation where they had expectations of us to be everything that we could possibly be. They made tremendous sacrifices, and I celebrate them every time I think about my own personal journey. Everyone's journey in life has ups and downs, peaks and valleys. I am grateful that God has brought me this far. I'm grateful that he has made me wiser over the years. And I'm grateful that I've had the chance to meet people like yourself, as well as so many others who have truly enriched my life. I always say to people that one of the most important values we have in life is the opportunity to engage with other people, to connect with them in meaningful ways. Because what that does is it deepens and expands our knowledge and our ability to navigate in a very challenging world, especially when life gets tough, because life will get tough. Yeah. It's great to have people around celebrating when we're on top of the mountain, but what we need are a ride or dies who's going to be with us in the valley.
Come on now.
And that's so important to understand that. And I'm just Kim, I'm just grateful. I mean, that's the word I'll focus on. I'm grateful because when I think about my life, I don't compare my life with anyone else's life. I think about my life in a very specific and strategic vertical sense,
Mhm.
meaning that I think about how God has blessed me and how He has blessed me to be a blessing to others.
Mhm.
And to whatever extent I have done that, can do that, and will continue to be mindful to do that, I feel so grateful in this moment.
Oh, I appreciate those words. And hey, Brother Thomas Maycott, good evening to you. Yes, I appreciate. And then when you use the word navigate and then ride or die, because that's how you are with me, Kenny. I can call you, you've been there for me through good times, bad times. With my girls, you Uncle Kenny, all they got to do is pick up the phone and you're there. So I celebrate you and I am grateful also for your life and how God has positioned you. At this time, I want to bring on my second guest, Professor Michael Griggs, Masters of Arts of Liberal Studies, University of Detroit, concentration African American and American History, credit Independent African Studies, University of Detroit, studied in Egypt. Oh my goodness. Bachelor's of Arts, American History, University of Detroit, and graduated magna cum laude. I want to bring in my next guest, Professor Michael Griggs of the Wayne County Community College District. How's it going, Professor Griggs? How you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, I am so honored, that all this wealth of knowledge. Now, tell us a little bit about you. And you told me that you have been a Detroiter all your life, okay?
Mhm.
All my life. I'm East Side. What side of town you from, Professor?
I'm West Side, but I won't hold that against you.
I will not hold it against you, okay? So tell us a little bit about what has it been like achieving all of this. You are the author of African American Art of War. What
Uh-huh.
has it been like for you, this journey as an African American man?
It's been amazing. I have a deep appreciation for history
Mhm.
from the stories that my mother and father and them told me. One that grounds me and helped me appreciate all of the milestones that I've been able to achieve. I often think about my grandfather from Alabama, who I didn't meet. I've never met him.
Mhm.
A young man who had 7 children who died in his 30s. He got hurt at work, but at that time, with Jim Crow being so pervasive, he was not allowed to go to the hospital for something that I heard could have been remedied. And this young man died as a result of some of the apartheid practices. And he never would have thought on his deathbed that his grandson would want to be a college professor,
Mhm.
teaching and sharing information. So stories like that and stories my mother and them told me from Mississippi and Alabama, it helped me have a deep appreciation for the opportunities that we have been afforded,
Mhm.
and I think about it often. So, like Maya Angelou said, that we are the hopes and the dreams of the slaves. So many
Mm.
things that we have accomplished and continue to accomplish is it was unimaginable not long ago.
Just not long ago.
Not long
Well,
ago.
well, let's dialogue together. Let's bring Kenny in. And I want to ask a question to both of you, and I'd like to get your feedback. Hello, Sister Tanya Johnson. Why is Black history important? Let me start with you, Professor Griggs. Why is Black history important, and how can we preserve it? And then I'd like Kenny for you to come back with a response.
Well, it gives us a sense of purpose. It also gives us a moral compass. We get so much uh, from history, from our history. Um, and when we talk about, Black history, we're talking about the beginning of human history. And that history has been so valuable to help maintain a tradition. We get our psychology from our tradition and from that history. We get our sense of religion from that history. Pretty much everything we do, whether we know it or not, we get it from that history. That's why it's so important for us to continue to perpetuate and hold on to those morals and values and those traditions that we got from yesterday.
Oh, right. Okay. Brother Kenny Anderson.
I think Black history is important because Black history is not just American history, but it is world history.
Mm.
And it is important for us to acknowledge it, as you suggested earlier in the commentary, 365 days a year. And let's squeeze another day in doing leap years. Let's do 366. It is our responsibility as a people to understand the breadth of our contributions to this world, beginning in the cradle of civilization, which was Africa, and understanding how we have literally fanned out across the world in a variety of different ways and left our mark indelibly upon the conscience of this nation and this world. You can't turn anywhere without encountering some element of the impact of Black history in our lives. And so in the month of February, I think it is tremendously important to celebrate these accomplishments, to study and understand our history, but also to recommit ourselves to the purpose that Professor Griggs has talked about. Because in defining our purpose, we also begin defining our destiny. And we need to understand that as we move forward in this journey and this process, we still have a story that has not been told. I was in a meeting earlier today talking about anecdotally, what would a Black History Museum look like in Huntsville? And we had historians in this room. This was just earlier today. We had historians in the room, and we were talking and sharing about the possibilities that exist because the deep wealth of knowledge that they have and the collective power that we have when we put our minds together, understanding that we have a divine purpose and that we have a divine opportunity. And so it is incumbent upon us in order to create the narratives that represent us, but also to take control of the road that we travel to make sure and ensure that we get to our destination in the most safe manner.
That takes me to my next question. What is our role as African Americans? You know, as we look at the issues that we are addressing today, Professor Griggs, what is our role? And Kenny, you know, what is our roles? What are we supposed to be doing as African Americans right now?
Well, each and every living thing, the way God created this, right? Every offspring learned what to do in life, from the bee to the insect to the Arab to the Jew, from their what was laid down from their mothers and fathers. We had, you know, just imagine what America would be if our mothers and fathers were not brave enough to try to get this place to live up to those words in their Constitution. Just think about the role they played in not only shaping American history, but shaping world history. When Mandela and others across the pond talk about how they were inspired by the accolades of our mothers and fathers, how it created movements in Europe, right? Just think about where we are now with the children today, with Black Lives Matter. They had a Black Lives Matter movement on every continent on the planet except Antarctica. They had a Black Lives Matter movement in China. So you see the children are shaking up this world like their parents did. And these children get the guidance. We get all our wisdom from our parents before. And I think that our role is to perpetuate, get the baton. We know what Rosa stood for. We know what Martin stood for. We can learn. And they didn't finish their work. So it's a lot more work need to be done. And we are the children who are here to fulfill their mission.
I like that. Kenny, our roles.
Yeah, I'll draw on what Professor Griggs is saying, but I think that one of the key elements of our role involves education. And when I say education, I'm talking about personal education, but I'm also talking about communal education as well, and familial education. I think that we need to be, you know, in the spirit of old griots, telling the story over and over again, passing down the language, passing down the testimonies, passing down the experiences of our past, so that we can first appreciate where we come from. You know, we didn't come from slaves. You know, that's one of the greatest challenges we have within our community. We didn't come from slaves. Slavery is part of our journey, but our journey began long before slavery. And I think it's important to reach back so that we can connect to our past, to bring us through those processes, to even better appreciate the challenges that we face during slavery and understand the power that we have as we come out of that process. And in the present day, when we see challenges to our voting rights, when we see challenges that include access to health care, when we see inequities in education, when we see all of these different things that are going on within our communities, this is where the education is so valuable. This is why that's so important. And that education should lead to a place of empowerment where people feel a sense of authority in terms of being able to take charge of what needs to be taken charge of. Not asking permission from someone, not asking for the opportunity to, let one or two of us into a situation where we feel empowered to make the change first by being the change that we need to be in order to serve the world. And I think service is a big part of that too. When I think about all of the many people in our community who could benefit from what many of us have that they don't have or don't have access to, we need to be about building strong, solid networks within our community in order to be able to lift us up. You know how they always talk about a rising tide raises all ships? We need to be the rising tide in order to raise all ships.
That's right.
Because wherever anyone in our community is broken, every one of us are broken as a consequence of that.
That's right.
Especially when we take the perspective of the Levite and the Jewish priest who looked the other way and crossed the road. We can't cross the road when we see challenges in our communities. We have to look those things squarely in its face, and we have to respond to them in compassionate, empathetic ways that will lift everyone up.
I love it. I love it. We have some responses that we're going to put on the screen. Our audience has asked, Ennis Woods, because you can't appreciate your journey and lessons if you don't know where you have truly come from and how you survived and endured. All right. Thank you, Brother Ennis Wood. Lady T, considering the temperature of the times we are living, is it possible to get accurate books published about our true history, Black inventions, and how much was stolen and reclaimed by other races? Does anyone want to respond to that, Lady T's question?
Well, you can always self-publish. We don't have to wait for other people to publish and tell our stories, and we can do that ourselves. And for years, we've been doing that self, from Phyllis Wheatley all the way down. So we don't have to wait for other people to tell our stories. So you can self-publish, and it's easier now than it's ever been before.
Yes, it is. It is. All right, Lady T, did you hear that? All right, do we have another response, Brother Al? All right. Let's talk about for a few minutes. Okay, Kim Klein. History is important in general. It provides critical information for moving forward. When we are not aware of history, we can be easily manipulated by those who do know it. And so we have to be mindful in how, again, navigating, using this knowledge to help, build up. Thomas Maycock, think about those who came before us. Yes. All right. Let's talk about, I don't know how many of you have seen the picture by Mr. Harris. He is whitewashing a picture of the historians, Dr. King, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, of a white rolling of paint across the picture. I don't know, Kenny, have you seen that that piece of art? Is that
I haven't.
You haven't seen it?
No.
I must get you a copy. I'm going to get a print and send this to you, but I will tag you in it so that you can see this. But Professor Griggs, you have seen it.
Yes, I have. Let's
talk about what is whitewashing. Why are they trying to eliminate the history from our textbooks? And I was sharing something with someone because they say it makes them uncomfortable. Why do we need to continue to talk about slavery and Black history? Let it go. So let's just whitewash it and get rid of it. Can we talk about that, gentlemen? Professor Griggs?
Sure we can. Information has often been a tool of the ruling class. We understand, it didn't take us long to understand that humans thrive off of information. They thrive off of knowledge. And if you deprive them of knowledge, and you give them an inaccurate portrayal of who they are, people will spend their entire lives trying to be something that they're not. It's just the way humans are. So right now they have created a narrative in America that told us who they are, and that narrative for years have told us who we are, and they have used that to be in control. So now here we come with this truth, with this information that threatens the stability of that narrative. So for years they told us that we need to have a conversation about race. You used to hear people say that. And now they went from that. We're like, okay, we got this information. Now they said, no, we just want to ban books altogether. We don't want to try to understand at all, because now the truth is attacking their very sensibility, their very core of who they have been told they are and what they have used to control other people. So to some of them, it's to their benefit to maintain this narrative because they understand it's part of social control. It's the only thing that separate one human from another human. If a person is told that this person is your boss, you will act accordingly just because you've been told this person has the power and they're your boss. In a certain language, in a certain way, you'll behave around that person and you'll try to appease that person. And this is how knowledge is. It is. And this is how social control is. So they're using it like they have always used it to control folks.
Kenny.
Yeah, I would say that one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing today is something that I kind of define as cultural anxiety. It's sort of this sense of, as people become more and more aware of certain types of things, and those things seem to surround them in a way that causes them to feel uncomfortable, either because they don't understand it or they're experiencing some level of conviction. It's creating a heightened sense of anxiety. And you and I, Kim, are in the psychology space. So we know how people that we've talked to over the years who are clients who respond to anxiety, they tend to push back, they tend to deny, they tend to escape. I mean, they become numb. There are lots of different ways that people may respond to that. And I think at the core of this challenge is the fact that truth requires accountability. So when one is confronted with the truth, the response to that truth is some type of action. And we've got the national conversation that we've had for so many years now about things like reparations, apologies, and righting what was wrong. You've got all these kinds of things, and you've got people saying literally, let's separate what we've gone from in the past, and let's leave it there. Let's not talk about it, because my parents didn't do it. I didn't do it. It wasn't my generation, so let's not even talk about it. And I don't see any other group of people in which that narrative is a part of their experience. Well, let's not talk about what happened. Let's just move on. Let's just keep it moving. It is a mistake for any of us, especially Black people, to separate ourselves from the knowledge of our past for a number of reasons. And the least of which for me is the fact that when I either deny my past and where I've come from, or when I try to marginalize, neutralize it, or minimize it, it disrespects the sacrifices that so many people made for me to get to where I am today. And so why would I want to disconnect myself from that history? It was a horrible, slavery was horrible. The Middle Passage was horrible. It was a terrible thing. There were people who were complicit in that process, and people make all kinds of arguments about that. We need to know the whole story of that situation, but it needs to be part of the narrative. And part of that narrative should be something that directs us somewhere. So it's not just a matter of talking about this, and then as Al told us earlier, leave people hanging. We need to talk about this, examine it, and then determine what the solutions are in order to be able to respond to those challenges.
Definitely. Awesome, gentlemen. Kenny, I want to show you the portrait I was telling you about. All right, we want to bring that on the screen. You have to see this. And this gentleman in Detroit, Mr. Harris, he said he was just sitting down and he just started, drawing this, and then he painted this. He said it just came to him, whitewashing, and dismissing history, getting rid of history. We don't need to talk about it. We don't need to discuss it. We don't need a narrative. We don't need a framework. We don't need a structure. We don't need an infrastructure. We don't need anything. Let's just erase it. In other words, let's erase the entire race. And that cannot be done because of the heritage that we bring to our society and what we have. Let's talk a little bit about, I want to tell you a story, gentlemen. Can I tell you a story? Now, I was raised in Detroit, Michigan. I attended Detroit Public Schools, and then from there I went on to the Seventh-day Adventist schools, where were European Americans. I didn't have one African American teacher in that whole program, my junior, senior year of high school. Then I went on to Wayne County Community College, and then from there to Oakwood University. Now, and from there, I was accepted to grad school and graduate work. Now, when I was completing my doctoral dissertation, and before I did that, I wrote the perspective, I did my orals, and I failed one component of my orals. I failed the Africana Studies part of my orals. Mm-hmm. I passed statistics, rhetorical criticism, psychology, every component, but African Studies, I failed. When I sat down with my white professor, he said, "You didn't answer the questions." I did not know my history because it was never given to me. Then I met a gentleman by the name of Dr. Anthony Ingram. And he looked at the questions and he said, "You didn't answer the question." He said, "Tell me, what do you know about your history?" I drew a blank. Dr. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Benjamin Banneker. He said, "You have so much more history than that." Mm. And then we began to talk about a paradigm shift that needed to be put in place. When that gentleman got through with me, I had 6 months to get ready to go back in to defend that part of my dissertation. I met with an entire white committee. He was the only African person on the committee. Mm-hmm. and my theater department, and Dr. Adele Anderson. And then by the time I defended, all they could do is sit back and they couldn't say a word. Then Dr. Ingram says, "I have some questions for each of you." I'm like, I'm trying to get out of this room, okay? Dr. Ingram asked each of them a question about slavery, about what we have gone through and endured. And you are sitting here in front of Kim Logan and what she has done with this doctoral dissertation. And you have been afraid of the history that she has researched and brought to the forefront because you don't want to talk about it. And so she made you uncomfortable. Do you know I had to threaten to go to the Detroit News Free Press, and my uncle at the Michigan Chronicle called them and said, "I've got a story for you about a Black young woman whose dissertation is not being put forward," because it made them uncomfortable. Let's talk about, and I have to say, I defended, and I still made them uncomfortable. All right. Let's talk about why Black history makes the European Americans and people uncomfortable. Kenny, why does it make it uncomfortable? Okay, we have a comment. Wait a minute. Some current races are ashamed and embarrassed and don't want this present generation and their families and grandchildren to know that they hatefully participated in racist and barbaric acts of racism, murder, lynching, evil, hate, violence, and discrimination. You are right, Mr. Woods. You are right. Do you know lynching was still taking place in the 60s? Professor Griggs and Kenny, in the 60s.
Yeah.
So why are you so uncomfortable with our history? Because you're embarrassed? Let's peel back that onion for a minute. Kenny, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think that that's a layered experience. So it's not just one thing. So I'll just kind of focus on one area that I think creates a lot of this and kind of speaks to the thing I was talking about regarding anxiety. When you deal with history, you are purportedly dealing with facts, the truth. And so if you expose that to me, and you give that to me, and I'm a reasonably functioning, reasonably responsible, reasonably intelligent person, then I would expect you to do something with that information, that you would accept it, that you would want to learn more about it, that you would affirm it. And so I think that a lot of people actually, once again, have trouble with the accountability of the truth, the accountability of the facts, confronting the truth of what was known. And I think here's the other piece. And we've seen this recently, and I think we'll continue to see this with the establishment of Juneteenth as a holiday. There's a national narrative right now, and I'm saying national because I know we're talking about it here in Huntsville. I bet people are talking about it all in a lot of different places. You know, a lot of people are saying, I'm glad we have this Juneteenth holiday, but I didn't really know a lot about it. And those people are not white people. Those are black people that are saying that.
Right.
And so it's interesting how, in the same way that, your question is basically why they're uncomfortable, there's a void in white people's understanding sometimes of black history or willingness to accept it. But there's also a void in our understanding of black history or our just pure knowledge of it. And that's why I said education is such an important part of this conversation. That self-education, understanding who we are, where we've come from, why certain things are as they are all valid conversations because they help to establish a sense of purpose. They help to establish a sense of identity. As I said earlier, it will ultimately determine our destiny. If we do not understand where we've come from, we will be confused about where we're going. And in the context of people who have been confronted with our history and the truth of our history, those are some evil things that took place in some of those instances. And there are a lot of people that are just unwilling and uncomfortable with that, unwilling to face it, unwilling to be accountable for it, and uncomfortable with the facts of it.
Thank you, Kenny. Amazing. Professor Griggs, why are they uncomfortable?
Well, studying history, especially Black history, people have been engaged for centuries of writing Black folks outside of the family of humanity, right? And rediscovering the truth about history. It will put Black folks back into the family of humanity, but those things that Kenny spoke of, it would convey that people who did those things to us, and us being human, would make them absolutely monsters. Because the evil and the atrocities, those were people's grandparents who committed those acts. And it's the people today who are blocking that truth about their grandparents. And we are just riddled and inundated with so many contradictions as it relates to trying to support this false narrative. We have pedophiles who we say today, who we dislike, but we name schools after these people who were founding fathers. If it was a Thomas Jefferson who took a young girl who was 13 years old and put her in a windowless cellar and raped her entire life. And we have monuments named for these people, right? So it's such a stark contradiction that a lot of people don't want to come to terms with this reality. Because if you understand what happened to the slaves, it says and conveys a lot about who the slave master is and what was going on with him. You see, you understand? Because he perpetuated those acts.
Yeah.
And we're talking about some very, psychopathic racial behavior, like Dr. Bobby Wright talked about. And it's hard to square that truth with the false narrative that they've been putting out for years, that the Christians, quote unquote, as they tell it, the good Christians enslave people. You see, the people of good faith exterminated Native Americans. It's so many contradictions. It just a little bit of our truth will bring this whole system to a halt.
Yes. And you look at President, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, they owned 600 slaves.
600 slaves.
But yet you have a national holiday recognizing this man.
That's right. That's right.
But you would not allow us for years to recognize a man who wanted to uplift civil rights, right. And still, I talk to people, no, they don't have Dr. King holiday off. Oh, they have to go to work.
Yeah.
You know, and so we're dealing with a lot of issues. If you're just joining us, I'm Dr. Kim Logan-Nowlin, and welcome to Live to Be Well. Joining me tonight is Kenny Anderson of Huntsville, Alabama, talk show host of Second Chance. Kenny, how long have you had Second Chance now? How long have you been on the air?
31 years.
See there? What? 31 years. We applaud you. And Professor Michael Griggs, and I want to thank Mr. Ennis Woods, one of your students, for introducing me to you. And also this phenomenal book that Professor Griggs has written, African American, The Art of War. I want to read something that I found quite interesting. And it says here that a climate that tends towards approval and encouragement of violence as a form of protest has been created by white terrorism directed against nonviolent protests, by the open defiance of law and federal authority by the state and local officials resisting desegregation, and by some protest groups engaging in civil disobedience who turn their backs on nonviolence, go beyond the constitutional protected rights of petition and free assembly, and resort to violence to attempt to compel the laws and policies with which they disagree. Dr. Griggs, can you expound upon that, please?
Well, that's an example of some of the policies that we face, that our parents face, and that many other folks have had to deal with. You know, white supremacy, I know we talk about it, but people, some of us who study it, it is a serious illness. It's really, when your value system is based on devaluing other human beings, it's really a serious problem. We're talking about let's just say, just look at sociology, right? In a social context, when white supremacy was created, right, it has instilled in the people who embrace it the inability to get along with any group on the planet. There's no productive relationship between whites and Native Americans, no productive relationship between whites and Mexicans, whites and Chinese, whites and Arabs, whites and blacks, whites and people, Hispanics. It doesn't matter, because it looks at human beings, it devalues human beings, it degrades human beings, and it leads folks to doing a lot of horrific things. And it also, you know, I teach Black psychology. It can make people hallucinate. What we see with law enforcement, disproportionately, we see white males hallucinating out here on these streets based on what they've been taught. We don't have black cops disproportionately killing people. We don't have Chinese cops disproportionately killing people. We have Arab police officers, they're not disproportionately killing people. It's basically the worst combinations you can have is that white male with people of color. And the outcome, disproportionately, people end up dead. They see things that's not there. They see guns when a person has a candy bar or a person has a phone. But the black police officers don't see that. The Asian police officers don't see that. So it's very dangerous. What you read is it's a continuation of, you know, the racist policy and the mindset behind those things. And it's very, very dangerous. You know, we talk about the history, but when you teach people certain things based off racism, it leads people to do some very horrific things. Horrific.
Kenny, in Professor Griggs' book, he talks about the frustration of powerlessness have led some Negroes to the conviction that there is no effective alternative to violence as a means of achieving the red dress of grievance and of moving the system. When we look at the solidarity reflected in the slogan, Black Power, what does that slogan say to you, Kenny? You know, when we look at what we have come from. And do you remember the two athletes who stood at the Olympics and they stood up and said, and they were ridiculed for that. So let's look at that slogan and how it has been used to even almost tear down the Black community. Black Power.
Yeah. Yeah, shout out to John Carlos and Tommy Smith in 1968, the Olympics. I was about probably 13 years old at the time, and I remember that because it was such a powerful symbol, not a defiance, but of Black pride. And I think that for so long, we've interpreted that act in one way. But I think that it's important for, even in the climate that we're in right now, to perhaps even revisit that act of, some people would call civil disobedience. They were told they should not do that on the Olympic stand if they were to win. And they, of course, paid the ultimate penalty as a consequence of that. A lot of people turned their backs on them, and they were basically blackballed in the sport and that type of thing after they came back home. But when I think about Black Power, and this is such a powerful question for me, because I've gone through the process of self-identity as it relates to what do I call myself. And so coming out of the 60s, from being a Negro to Black, the Black Power movement, then moving into that particular time where people were beginning to identify as African Americans, which of course is still a very strong and very powerful designation. And I embraced that at one time, and that was exactly how I wanted to be identified. But I've now gone back to calling myself Black with a capital B, because there's a lot of power in that. When I think about who I am, number one, I don't think I'm who I am by accident. And I think that because I know race is a social construct developed by man, my beautiful Black color doesn't make me any less than any other person out there. And when I think about the history of our people, again, this disconnect between people not wanting to talk about what happened during slavery, I'm like, yo, let's go past that. Let's talk about where we started from. Let's talk about all those great mathematicians and architects and scientists. Let's talk about all of those. Well, let's show some Black pride in that process and embrace the Black power that comes with that. Because when I think about the term and the notion of Black power, there is an element of militancy in that doesn't cry out for violence. For me, what it does is cries out for pride. That's right. I'm Black and I'm proud. I'm proud of my color, whether I'm, jet black or whether I'm high yellow. I'm proud whether my hair is all nappy and kinky. That hair is just as beautiful as hair that's straightened. Mm-hmm. My cultural identity as a Black person is powerful to me. Mm-hmm. Because it informs me first, but then it also serves as a powerful demonstration for who we are as a people every single day. So when I live my truth and I walk out of my door, I'm a Black man and I'm proud of it. Mm-hmm. And you're going to get every ounce of Blackness out of me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to respect it too. That's the other part of it. I'm not going to fight for your respect. I'm just going to lay it out there and show you that I'm worthy of it.
That's right.
You decide what you want to do with it. That's right. I'm Black and I'm proud. Now what?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. I feel that passion. I hear that passion. Let me tell you what, I posted this with some other Black historian. Langston Hughes said, just one drop of Black blood makes a colored man. One drop Black is powerful. I posted that on my TikTok page and a white woman said, so? I said, my Lord. And I did not respond to her because you don't understand. Let's move on. Medgar Evers said, I'm talking about solutions. We're moving into solutions now. You can kill a man, but you can't kill his idea. All right. That was Medgar Evers. Let's look at Nikki Giovanni. I remember Kenny when she came to Alabama A&M in my freshman year, sophomore year, and I went over to see her, and I was able to get close to her. Michael, I was able to get close to her and shake her hand. And she looked at me and pointed to my head. She said, they can take everything from you, but once you put it here, they can't take it. Mm. She said, get your education, get knowledge, read. And she kept, impressing that upon us. Read, all right? Mistakes are a fact of life. It is the response to the error that counts. That's what she said. All right, come on, let's dig a little deeper. And so as we look at this, and even Marvin Gaye, war is not the answer because only love can conquer hate. All right. And so the other day I posted a picture of myself in a red dress, and in this red, everybody said, "Oh, happy Valentine's Day." No, after the red represented the blood that my people have shed, Africans. That's why I had on the red dress. And then I put the caption, strong Black woman. Yes, I did, Kenny. I put strong Black woman up there because that's who I am. And being identified, like I said, I put it out there. So now what? You're right. Now what? Because I have just as much right as you do, but it's how I'm going to be able to stand to that knowledge. All right. So let's talk about solutions. Here we are. We're talking about why it is important to keep our history alive, to talk about it, to look at the narratives of what we need to do. So some of the action steps that we need to talk about, and then we even need to look at this thing. That's right, Bobby. Right on. Okay. The other day I was listening to James Brown say it loud on Black on Pride. I was blasting it in my house. Okay. Let's talk about some solution. Professor Griggs, what's some things that we need to do as Black people to begin to look at this?
Well, in a nutshell, like Kenny mentioned, education is really, really important. Not the unfortunate surface education that we've been getting, but really studying and troubling the pages of history yields so much. Not just the King, I Have a Dream speech, but let's get into, putting the entire movement on the shoulders of a man who was 26 years old. And that man had to figure out how to take power from a world superpower so his people would have the opportunities without firing a single shot. That type of studying, which gives us the insight to be able to navigate and do things and accomplish things. I learned so much from the brilliance of yesterday. What our parents, achieved. But that behind that achievement was a lot of intelligent planning that went into that. You see, not just Harriet Tubman running, back and forth, but she was part of the military. She knew how to make bombs. She had to go down there and she trained people on how to navigate through the woods from the South and how it took a year to get this. The planning was so beautiful. And I think one thing about teaching Black studies is that, I know people walk away and they think they know the few people who we taught about. It's so much more to the story. It is so much more to these people. These people, they were giants. I mean, they still amaze me. The letters from a Birmingham jail, King, as a father, this man who had to wrestle with the fact that he knew, and he wrote about how he knew he wouldn't live a long life so we can live a long life. How he knew he wouldn't be able to walk his daughter down the aisle. He'll never have his grandchildren sitting on his knee and playing with them. Some of the things that went through them, but their commitment and passion to making things better for children and names who they've never met before. I wasn't even born when King got assassinated, but he talked about how he was going to do this so generations who come after him wouldn't have to deal with this. So really just studying our folks, again, not surface studying, but really get into them will give us so many lessons on how we can achieve even more during this life of our own. So really, it really comes down to education. I've been studying Black studies for, 30 years, from here all the way to Egypt, studying Black folk, and I've learned so much on what it is to be me, what it is to be Black, why God made the Black man and the Black woman the first mothers and fathers of humanity by his own ordination. It was his choice. All of humanity rested on our shoulders of the Black man and the Black woman, and how folks have wrote us out of that position, but we need to put ourselves back in where God started this thing off.
Come on now, come on. You better say that. You know, I'm that next trip to Egypt. Put my name on the list, Professor Griggs. All right. You know, I want to get to Africa, Egypt. I want to see how these Black people built pyramids with what?
I know.
But they were geniuses.
Yes, it's
mathematics and all of that.
Yes.
Kenny's solutions. Come on, let's talk about solutions.
Yeah. Right on. Egypt is in Africa. Right on.
That's right.
First of all, I would say that we have to remind ourselves that Black history is not just a hashtag. That we shouldn't just get fired up just because the month of February comes and we get all into Blackness, and then March 1st comes and we have a different experience. Mm-hmm. I have developed the saying that Black history starts on January 1st and it ends on December 31st. Mm-hmm. Because what that does, it really challenges me to experience the breadth and the depth and the richness of the history that's known as Black history. So we have to do that through those educational channels. The month of January was National Mentoring Month. We have to be more intentionally and strategically and proactively engaged in the lives of our young people across the spectrum. I'm not just talking about nuclear families and biological parenting. I'm talking about wherever the gaps are in our communities as it relates to our young people who need us. You know, we want to define people as struggling, you know, so those are the ones that are worthy of my support. No, all of our young people need us. Mm-hmm. And we need to work across the spectrum of their lives, providing strategic and intentional guidance for their lives so that they can know how to move forward through this journey. I think another important thing is when we talk about the issue of voting, I think voting, in fact, is one of the most powerful things that we can do. And I think it's very easy to run down a rabbit hole with regards to the pushback on voting rights right now. It's very easy to get numb, paralyzed, depressed, and just want to get out of the game. But I think what this is and can be for us is a call to action. We have to, in our communities, begin mobilizing now. See, we're talking about the midterms. We knew the midterms were coming 2 years ago. What have we been waiting for? You know, all of this pushback and legislative action against voting rights has been taking place right on our nose. But now we're all fired up because in a few months it's going to be an election. We have to have year-round cycles of voting education so that people can understand what's at stake.
Yes.
We have to meet people in our communities because all elections at the end of the day are local. We have to meet people in our communities and challenge them and hold them accountable for doing what's in our best interest.
Yes.
And we have to find viable candidates and support them. Younger people, middle-aged people, and even older people. And we need to find ways to support them by educating them about what our needs are and then holding their feet to the fire. There's a lot of practical stuff that we can do in our communities to honor the many sacrifices that we've known to be a part of the journey of people that we celebrate during Black History Month. But in this moment, we have a tremendous opportunity to leave our own legacy because all of us are going to turn it over to somebody one day. And the reality is the question has to be for us, what legacy are we going to turn over to them? The truth of that will be found in what we choose to do now. What do we make priorities in the lives of our people? Yes. What do we choose to do in terms of empowering our lives so that we can move forward in that process?
That is something. I have to tell you this short story. You're getting ready to wrap it up. I got to bring you back. That's just it. Because we've got to talk about critical race theory. We got to talk about, you know, our red line. We got a lot to talk about. All right. So like you said, we're going to keep it going in March. All right. We need this information to our people real quick. I remember I was going to school at a Delphin Academy and a family sponsored me. And this woman said, one day you will return the favor. I thought I was right out of a Godfather movie. All right. And so I graduated from school, went on to college and everything. Then I came back to Detroit, and I was one of the first Black women to have a show on Barton Cablevision. Mr. Barton himself interviewed me, said, I want to give you a show. And my show was called Speak for Success, helping Black people to be articulate and enunciate and pronunciate, and I took speech therapy to television. All right. Well, this particular night, the woman called and said, I'm calling in to return on that favor. I said, well, I'm really, really busy. I don't have time. I've got to interview this person and that person. She said, do you remember 1974 and 75? I said, yes, I do. She says, I need you to come to this address. I don't care what you have to do. So I got in my car and I was looking around. I'm like, I don't know this neighborhood. So I walked in the house. She opened the door and I walked in and I said, okay, and I looked, I saw a lot of pictures. And then around the corner came this little lady. And in her hands, she had a picture of me. And that was Mother Rosa Parks. And she said, I watch you every day at 4:00. Every day. And I was stunned, Kenny and Michael. I was stunned. She said, can we have a conversation? And she said, I want you to know what your words bring to me every day. I was on 5 days a week. And so from there, she asked me to be the speaker for her freedom ride from the South to the North for 3 years. And then we would talk about what her approach, her vision was. And I would go to a little street called Wildermere, not too far from City Temple, Kenny. And she gave me the history of what it was like to be sitting in the jail. And we sit there and we sang, God has smiled on me. Like a tree planted by the rivers, I shall not be moved. That's another show we have to do about the Black music. And then she said, all that you have, you must give back to your people. Don't leave Detroit. Mayor Coleman Young told me, don't leave Detroit. Stay here. And I'm like, I got to go. I'm going to LA. I'm taking this. And I stayed in my city, and I'm still here, and I made a promise to Mother Rosa Parks and Mayor Coleman Young that I would stay in Detroit, and give back to my people, all people, but my people. And I will never forget that when she was laid to rest, before she was laid to rest, I have a sign language choir, Professor Griggs, and she handpicked my choir to come to her church, St. Matthew's Church. I spoke for her Women's Day. She was always, and then when I opened my clinic, she said, is there anything I can do for you? And I was like, And I said, I'm opening my own practice. Would you come and cut the red ribbon? People, your haters, people didn't believe it was on the invites. The civil rights mother is going to be there. And she was there sitting in a little corner, and the woman who paid my tuition was Mrs. Rosa Parks' personal nurse, a member at my church. You don't know how God is going to connect your stories so they can be, paved out. All of this to be given to our people. And from there, she came and cut the red ribbon. And she said, when I pass, your choir, she said, I want God's hands of praise signing right in front of my casket. We did 45 minutes of songs. So when that line was from here to yonder, people can't, Kim, what you do? What? See, you don't understand my story. It started way back in 1974. But what if I had said no? The opportunity to serve Mother Rosa Parks. And pictures are in my home today of that story of what, and then I took my children with me to meet her and talk with her. It was a privilege. So we must keep Black history alive. We must tell our stories, to meet someone. I never had a chance to meet Dr. Martin Luther King, but I was able to sit hours, days, and months with Mother Rosa Parks. And it changed my life to give and to not just, create, but to mobilize myself. If I've got to walk alone, then I'll walk alone. But I'm going for it. And that's what Mother walked. She said, if you've got to walk alone, she told me, then walk alone. but make a difference in that walk.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she said. All right. Closing remarks, Kenny Anderson, then Professor Griggs. Take us out. Come on, close us out.
Yeah, it's just been an honor to have been here with you all tonight. My dear friend from so many years, my sister, my family. So good to be here with you on your platform. So wonderful to share this space with Professor Griggs. And I'm an educator too, so I love sitting at the feet of educators and taking up as much as I can from them. So it's been an honor to be with him tonight as well. Just once again, thank you for this opportunity to be able to share with you all tonight.
Thank you, Kenny. Professor Griggs.
Likewise too. I feel like I got a new friend with Kenny and with you, Kim, and I'm looking forward to engaging more. You know, I'm a phone call away anytime you need me, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, I definitely would like to bring you both back. Let's talk about the Black music, and we'll bring on another individual who's a historian in Black music. But we need to look at the richness of the music. I want to say to each of you, it's important that you understand who you are, where you have come from, so you will have direction of how you will be a blessing to others. We stand on the shoulders of giants. I stand on Professor Griggs' shoulder, Kenny Anderson, and I'm standing on yours. Let's stand together and walk this journey and never forget that we are Black people and we are proud. Say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud. And I am proud to be a Black woman. I'm Dr. Kim Logan-Nowlin. Until next time, God bless you and live to be well.
Live to be well with Dr. Kim.